Here we have the next part of Chapter 11. Besides filling out a check, you also have to do something called endorsing a check. So if someone gives you a check, you have to sign on the back authorizing that you're going to take money out of someone else's account. So in the first one we had a check covering the board here, but if you were to flip that check over and turn it sideways, on the back you'd see 3 lines like this and then a section that says for office use only. So the part you're going to be taking a look at is right here, and this is called endorsing. This is saying I'm taking responsibility for getting money out of that person's account. You should be the one who is on the front of the check. So whoever is on the front of the check, it says pay to the order of, that's the person that should be endorsing it. All right? So normally what I would do is I would just sign on the top line and I would receive the money. The bank would say, okay, and you've done the right thing here, and go forward from there. But there can be other things we can do. So I'm going to sign the middle here, or down at the bottom, and that'll work too. The bank doesn't really care. So that is endorsing the check. But there are other things I could do, like I could put for deposit only. All right? I can put the words for deposit only. So if I do this, now it's restricted. The only thing the bank can do is deposit this money in my account. So they won't give anyone cash, or they won't send it to someone else like that. Because once I sign the check, it's good to go, and it can be cashed at any bank by anyone. So if I'm at my office in a business and I want to sign and I've got 50 checks, I can sign them all. Then I can give them to an employee and say, hey, take this to the bank. Now, they might go to the bank with $10,000 in checks, and that's pretty tempting for someone to just take in cash and then never come back on the job. So what most businesses do is they have a stamp that they actually order for deposit only, and then the name of that business. And every time an employee or the owner receives a check, is they stamp it for deposit only. Then you can hand $10,000 to anyone in your business. In fact, anyone who goes to the bank, regardless of who they are, and says, I want to cash these checks, the bank will just say, nope. And they put it all into the bank account and say, nope, it's for deposit only. You can't get any cash with this, okay? So a restrictive endorsement is very useful in a business because it means the check is good to go. It can be taken to the bank, but it also restricts where the money can go. So almost every business out there puts for deposit only, and then they take their big bunch of checks to the bank, and it doesn't matter who takes it because it's only going to go in the business account. All right? Next thing there, when you go to the bank, you turn in something called a deposit slip. Now, I know. These are kind of antiquated. In fact, most of the world, they don't really do this. America's getting kind of behind the times, okay? But if you were to do this and physically fill out for each check, you would fill out a deposit slip like this. Normally, we just take it to the bank, and if the banks have been updated enough, they will simply put it in a machine and it circulates through, the computer scans it, and that you just, for deposit only, they're just scanning all your checks through, and that's it. So you still need to know how this works in case your bank doesn't do that, but hopefully it will have the scanner function and it's going away. But real quick here, if you want to deposit things in there, you have to come in and put the date on, and you're going to put any cash you want in there. So if you turn in cash, you're going to have to list how much at the top, and then you're going to have to list each check individually, or singly is what they call right here, and then we'll put that on there. And so, you're going to have different amounts of checks on there. And if it doesn't fit in the numbers right there, you flip the deposit slip over, and the back will have lines all the way across it, like 15 lines. So hopefully that's enough. And then you bring that down, and that's going to be your total down there. So this is 4, that's 8, and okay. And so that's going to be your total. This is both your checks and your cash. It's all added together, and that's how much you're depositing. So this is your official record or deposit slip. But as I said, a lot of banks are moving away from these. It used to be the thing you had to do when I was growing up, and even into the 2000s. But for most banks, they simply stick the stack of checks into a machine, and it scans them both front and back, and then they go from there. So hopefully you've got a bank that does that, and these are going to be sort of antiquated. But you need to understand certainly endorsing, especially the restricted endorsement. And you need to understand too that when you take your checks to the bank and deposit them, you might still want a record for yourself. So you might fill out the deposit slip for you and put it in your records, less instead the bank actually getting a hold of it. Okay. Also, don't forget that we had those check stubs earlier on the last video, and so this some of this information will go into the check stub. For example, it says, add deposits here. Well, you'd have to add the cash and those checks into the deposit in part of the check stub to give you a clear understanding of how much money you have in the bank, your balance brought forward. Okay? So that's another reason you might use this even with the scanners and the banks, is that this information can then be used in the check stub to record how much money is actually in your bank. All right? So to make sure you don't run out, that's why you do that.